This is a write-up which was prepared by Dr. Atta Kennedy, a founding member of the New Patriotic Party. And this makes interesting reading. Indeed, if you permit me, I'll read all of it. If you don't, I'll read extracts. But whatever it is, this document is a most interesting document prepared by a founding member of the New Patriotic Party. Not just a founding member, one who also was the campaign manager of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo when he made his first attempt to contest for the presidential candidature of the party. Now listen. He says, tomorrow, that is today, he wrote it yesterday. Tomorrow, the cherished New Patriotic Party will take another step on its way to irrelevance, unless it is saved by the delegates. This is a very strong statement. That this conference is a step towards irrelevance. And he continues. A delegates conference should be preceded by constituency and regional conferences, but there were none. Proposed amendments in their final form should be circulated in advance to enable constituencies to instruct their delegates, but this has not happened. Our journey here began when we handed over our party to one man and permitted him to do as he pleased. He took our mandate and delivered to Ghana a government centered largely on corruption, nepotism, and arrogance. These acts of corruption, not seen since the Kalabure era, were rightly described by John Salisbury in Polycratus in the 12th century as acts done publicly, and neither governors nor proconsuls checked them, because the raven rejoices in the works of the wolf, and the unjust judge applauds the minister of injustice. In lands whose princes are infidels and companions of thieves, they hasten to embrace those whose misdeeds they observe, thus adding their own share of iniquity in the hope that they may gain for themselves some portion of the spoil. Wow. As a result of this governance, the people of Ghana overwhelmingly returned the discredited John Mahama to the presidency with 20% of his votes coming from good patriotic NPP members. Many more stayed home. The voters took to the heart Nana Akufo-Addo's counsel that they owned their ballots and could do with it whatever they chose. Given this debacle, our task as a party was simple. It was to restore our party to its cherished values, clean its leadership of those whose misgovernance had left the stench of corruption through scheduled elections, and restore it to its status as a natural party of government. Unfortunately, the leaders who need to face accountability from the party grassroots decided they would exercise illegally and immorally the mandate due to the next executives by organizing amendments and flag bearer elections that they have no right to organize. Initially, there was talk that Nana Akufo-Addo, and Jack, that is John Ajekun Kufuor, our two ex-presidents, would jointly step up to call out this aberration, but they didn't. There were rumors that our party elders who had held consultations and found the process lacking would call them out, but just as they did. Oh, sorry, it's so long. There were rumors, let me go back. There were rumors that our party elders who had held consultations and found the process lacking would call them out. But just as they did, while Nana Akufo-Addo hijacked the party, they have chosen a loud silence. Then there was talk that the declared presidential aspirants would seize this opportunity to demonstrate selflessness and leadership, but they have not. They do not want to offend those who are bent on destroying their party, lest they destroy their ambitions. So tomorrow, our party, like Asantemain did under Osei Tutu Odikan, will come to our Pratt River and decide whether to cross it or not. Meanwhile, against the background of what we did in the last 8 years, John Mahama's tokenism looks transformative. His promise to finish the Crawford market seems like the second coming of Christ against the party that saw a market almost completed by John Ajekun Kufuor and chose to blow $58 million on a hole in the ground called the National Cathedral as the ultimate testament to Aban Boni. Meanwhile, some former government officials who should be clearing their names of facing prosecution are lining up for another chance to continue their loot and share governance through the presidency. The NPP should remember that political parties do not have a divine right to immorality. Wow. The CPP, which was once the most vibrant party in Africa, has no seat in parliament, and the ANC no longer commands a majority in South Africa. Now our party, like the Ashantis did, need more Tinubu Akoduas than Kwame Tuas. The delegates for this weekend should have one slogan: let us save the NPP for Ghana. Honorable delegates, do not agree to elect a flag bearer in January 2026 when no sensible Ghanaian will select our Black Stars team for the 2026 World Cup, because we need to see which players are in form just before the World Cup. And politics, like soccer, depends on current form. Let's elect polling station, constituency, regional and national officers before electing a flag bearer to lead a strong renewed party. Let's insist that all who vote in our general elections can vote in our primaries. Let's demonetize our politics. If you, the delegates, do not do what is right, Ghanaians will reject us again. The NPP does not own anybody's vote, but we can earn it. Vote wisely. God bless you. God bless NPP, and God bless Ghana. Atakobna Kennedy, 18th July 2025.
Discussion of the scrapping of fuel allowances and fuel allocation, and we start with Beatrice Annan.
Okay, so Sana, I'm happy we have a lot of time to discuss this topic, so I can take my time to explain. I've heard some members of the NPP say that it's a political gimmick. Some say it's PR. Others say that, oh, it's not feasible. Others also posit that how are public officials supposed to conduct the affairs of the state if they are not given fuel? And I'm optimistic that by the time I end my discussion, our cherished viewers and our listeners will appreciate the policy rationale behind this. First of all, let me say that in the lead up to the 2024 elections, President Mahama made a number of promises to the Ghanaian people. In fact, at the time of making the promise, we were in a state as a country that we agree that we could not continue to do the same things we used to do and expect different results. Our debt to GDP or to tax was over 90%. The country was facing haircut. Unemployment was highest at about 14 point something percent. As for youth unemployment, it was about 23%, and all the macroeconomic indicators show that the country was not headed in the right direction. And so as a political party, we took a decision, led again by President Mahama, to say that we cannot continue to cushion public officers and then all others would suffer. And I can understand that the NPP came into a position just some 6 months ago, and so they still are living in that, I mean, that state of being a public officer. Some of them are still going through the 5 stages of grief, and so they have not come to a certain realization. But the point has to be made that this was the background of the promise to scrap fuel allowances for political appointees. Now, it was not only the promise to scrap fuel allowances, but also to scrap ex gratia, where after you serve your tenure for 4 years, then they calculate your salary for every 3 months of the year that you serve, and they give you a lump sum as ex gratia, then you take it away. President Mahama would have benefited. He has constantly and consistently made the point that he has benefited from ex gratia before. So at the time of making that promise, it was not as if he was new to these benefits. Again, President Mahama said that as part of the cost-cutting measures, he was also going to stop this subscription of DSTV for public organizations. So one day I went to work, and then there was no DSTV again. I'm still working. It hasn't affected productivity in any way. In fact, if anything, it would have enhanced it, because now you will not have your favorite BBC and CNN and be watching. And so it would have enhanced it. And so the point has to be made that the cancellation of the DSTV subscription and subsequently the fuel allowance cancellation is not just something that was done. It is a promise that was made to the Ghanaian people, and promise fulfilled. Now let me say that I was even working in the capacity that I was working in before the NDC government was sworn into office. From the time, or I can say that from 8th January till today, I don't know of anybody at the office of the president, or at least I can speak for myself, who was given fuel allowance. And so for the 6 months that I have been in my office, I have not received fuel allowance. I have not also been given an official vehicle, and no presidential staffer or government appointee, at least at the office of the president, that I know of has been given vehicle. And so I have been going to work every day, and everybody has been coming to work, and they have not been given fuel allowance. And so even before it was cancelled, I never benefited. So for me, nothing has changed, and I'm sure for many of my colleagues, nothing has changed. Now, I've heard some people say that, oh, but how much is the fuel? It is a lot. If you calculate the total number of people who will be enjoying the fuel. But it's also important to stress that this is in tandem with a certain line of new governance style that President Mahama wants to introduce. When we came to power, or before the NDC came to power, we had over 124 ministers. In fact, we were told that the reason for the huge numbers was because the work was a lot and they needed to do. By cutting off even the number of ministers from 124 to 60, President Mahama has saved the state 64 extra Land Cruisers. Because under Nanado, we would have needed 124 Land Cruisers for ministers and their deputy ministers. Today, 64 Land Cruisers have been saved. All these would have been fueled. Today, those fuel allowances have also been saved. And I hear people say that, oh, how much is it? But what President Mahama is doing is that he's taking away the comfort of public officers, that by reason of having certain largesse as a public officer, sometimes they are even tempted to forget about the plight of the people. And so we are having this discussion at the time when government has imposed a 1 cedi levy on a liter of fuel. It will be very insensitive for the citizens to be buying fuel, and although we admit that the cost of a liter of fuel today is way less than what we used to buy under the NPP government, the public officials must also appreciate the perspective of the citizen. And so if this is a measure, because when citizens complain and the feedback keeps coming that maybe we can't do this, it's important for you to put yourself and maybe go back and review the policy. Otherwise, if people are buying fuel and you are benefiting, how else are you going to explain, or how else are you going to appreciate the apply? I kept using the example of Cecilia Dapa. That how was he going to understand the young people who were complaining if she had so much money stashed under her bed? How was she going to understand that the economy was hard? So it is not just the cost-saving mechanism, but also for public officials to know that you will not have everything paid for you. I have not been given an official residence or an official bungalow. I still live in my house. I use my car. In fact, nothing has really changed. I have also not been paid for over 6 months. So really, nothing has really changed from being in opposition to being in power. And I would urge President Mahama to go on that path so that together we can correct the misconception that the moment you become a public officer, all of a sudden you would be transformed into some special human being who all of a sudden must not appreciate the plight of the people you used to be with. And we must all commend. I know that for the NPP and for some people, it's a very difficult communication line, because you have a president who seems to be doing everything right, and you are a political opponent, so you may not want to praise this person. So you must find a justification to, or you must find a reason to downplay the policy. But I would urge that whether we are NDC, CPP, NPP, or whatever political party we belong to, we must make it a point that on certain matters we have to agree on. That our lives must not be so comfortable that everybody will want to be in public service. And I can understand, and Sana, I can tell you, I understand why it's called public service. Because it's not a joke. You are probably denying your family. I mean, these days my kids have to wake up at dawn so that they can come and see my face. Otherwise, I'll be in the same house with them from Monday to Friday, and I'll never see them, because by the time I come home they are sleeping. By the time I leave, they are still sleeping. So either I wake up and go and watch them before I leave. So that's you denying everything. But it must not be so comfortable as for you to forget what I mean, the citizens are complaining about, and I will pat President Mahama in the back. And it is not just about that, but it's about the fact that this is a government that has taken a cost-cutting mechanism. As we speak, Independence Day celebration cost this year was reduced from 15 million cedis to 1.5 million, merely because a decision was made that it should be marked in a certain way and not in the manner as we have done. That is a cost-saving mechanism. I mean, what is 15 million cedis to perhaps Ken Oforiatta or some of their ministers? But to many people, it could do a lot in our communities. Again, it's important to say that even at the office of the president, the budgetary allocation for goods and services have been reduced by over 419 million cedis. So whatever the NPP was doing, the NDC has reduced just one budget item at the office of the president by over 419 million cedis. The total budget reduction, when you combine all the state-owned enterprises and ministries, departments, agencies, have been reduced by 10 billion. And so this is a government that is on the path to an economic recovery that will bring relief to the people of Ghana. This is a government that appreciates that it's not just the cancellation of fuel allowance, but we ought to take measures to stabilize the cedi so that businesses can expand for many young people to be employed. This is a government that appreciates that we must do what we have to do so that trotro drivers do not buy a liter of fuel for 20 and 23 cedis like we saw under the previous government. This is a government that appreciates that we must do things and fasten our belts and not live at some levels of comfort while the citizens suffer. So let not anybody deceive the Ghanaian people that this is a PR gimmick, or that the PR, or that there is nothing wrong. Some have even asked that. So if a public officer wants to move from, let's say, Accra to the north to go and conduct an official duty, must he buy his own fuel? You know, every organization, they have their operational expenses, and so it is budgeted for and approved. And so if a public official was going outside maybe their residence region or town, they would normally have their operational expenses to cater for those things. But in addition to all those operational expenses, the public officers were entitled to fuel. So that was also an extra something for them. And so this time, President Mahama has said that constant, maybe 50 liters of fuel that you know that you are entitled to a month. Some people don't even use. They give it to their friends. Some people give it to... All those things have been cancelled. And I will urge everybody to join the NDC and President Mahama in righting the wrongs of the past. And let nobody deceive anybody to believe that these are just minor things. It is the beginning to changing the narrative about public service. And I am optimistic that with the constitutional review process going on, we should be able to scrap ex gratia. We ought to get to a point where public service is no longer the easiest route to riches. Where public service is no longer about public service, but what I can get. For which reason these days, many people want to be politicians. Many young people, I have some young scientists I'm even convincing to go abroad and go and study emerging fields so that they can come back. And I mean, you can imagine if you were like a neurologist or these new emerging fields. So everybody wants to do politics. Can you fault them? Because of the wrong impressions that have been created over the time. And I say that this should be the beginning of the conversation to saying that public service is not for the benefit of a few. The public service is indeed public service, and even to change the orientation so that people don't have these wild expectations that they want to come into public service for something. If you want to come into public service, it has to be, as the name suggests, public service. And you know, when I was in opposition, when I talk this way, people say it's because we haven't come to power. And then we come to power and I've been consistent, and they say, oh, it's because where you are, you're not controlling any budget or you don't buy anything. But for me, I hold these things to be true. That the essence and the ultimate sense of power is to make the lives of people better than you came to meet it. It's to change the narrative. It's to provide for your people a fuller and richer life so that they would appreciate that there is a reason why the NDC as a corporate entity exists. And I will urge everybody to support the NDC in our quest to change the narrative. These may be little wins, but they are wins which, when we consolidate, it will be very difficult for any political party to come and change. How will any political party come and convince the Ghanaian people that you cannot run a government with 60 ministers? If somebody has done so successfully, I even look forward to when we will reduce it further. How would anybody convince the Ghanaian people that public officers must take fuel allowance if it has been scrapped in the past and it is possible? How would anybody convince the Ghanaian people that it is not possible to reduce the total budget expenditure by 10 billion if it has been done, and all other macroeconomic indicators like inflation, exchange rates, and everything is showing positive sign? So I think that the Ghanaian people should rally behind the NDC. They should support the NDC. Where the NDC is wrong, criticize us and call us out. I remember I saw one Facebook post where somebody disagreed with something that had happened. I don't remember specifically what it is, but another person was saying that is why we must vote the NDC out. Someone said, please, let's get serious. The fact that we are criticizing doesn't mean that we want to vote you out. So we appreciate that along the line, the government may not be perfect. When you criticize, we'll take it in a good way. That I can assure you. No journalists will be killed because they express some dissenting opinion. Lives will not be threatened. We will live in a society where we will build our own government with the government and for us. And so, although you will say that they are early days yet, I want to urge everybody, keep bringing your opinion, keep bringing your suggestion. I've heard some people say that, but what about the public servants who also receive fuel allowance? We can only start somewhere and continue to a certain point. At a point in time, the conversation will be larger and everybody will join in.